There is so much confusion about contact center AI technology. I think one of the challenges is that we've had multiple phases of AI technology in the contact center, and the capabilities of these technologies are quite overlapping. So let me give you a framework that I find useful to think about the three phases of AI technology in the contact center. Let's start with legacy technology. It's been around for a couple of decades now. These are things like touch-tone IVRs, clickbot, kind of chatbots where you press buttons to pick options, and notifications, just sending simple SMS messages. All these have been around for quite a long time. Adding to those recorded voices, which can make the system seem really lifelike and on brand, and directed dialogue interactions, which guide a customer through a process, you can deliver really quite effective automation, even using these legacy technologies. But about a decade ago, the capabilities expanded to include speech recognition, voice biometrics, speech analytics to really understand the kind of interactions your contact center agents are having with your customers. Agent assist, popping up suggestions to help them better support your customers. And how may I help you systems that simply ask customers, how can I help? And they say what they want and then they route them to the right place. Now, the thing is that these classic conversational AI technologies overlap with legacy too. So you can create directed dialogue using classic conversational AI too. And it's actually really effective. Sometimes you need to lead customers through a process. And you can use recorded voices to make your system sound really lifelike and on brand. But now we have generative AI too. Things like ChatGPT and Anthropic's Claude. These technologies different in many ways because they're not scripted. They generate responses based on the inputs you give them. This is really quite groundbreaking. But there's an overlap between what generative AI is capable of and the classic and legacy technologies. So you can do speech analytics using generative AI. You can do actually much more effective agent assist using generative AI. And you can build systems that ask, how can I help? And route to the right place, and even create directed dialogue systems using generative AI. Although it's actually quite hard to get generative AI to stay on track with a process like that. But then there's these capabilities of generative AI that really weren't well served by classic and legacy technology. Things like question answering, using your knowledge base, your website information, and other documents to answer questions that your customers might have. There were attempts to do this with classic conversational AI, but they were pretty poor. Question answering is actually one of the main use cases of generative AI right now. But it can do much more. It can have really quite nuanced dialogues with your customers because it's read the whole of the internet. It knows how humans converse with each other and how they have dialogue. Importantly, generative AI can reason over structured and unstructured data. It's a great translator. It can translate different languages and also summarize long form information into shorter form information. Really useful to do a quick agent wrap up where it summarizes the key points in a call, or just summarizing the contents of an order, for example, to play it back to a customer in an IVR, or even send a simple SMS notification. When you add nuanced dialogue, reasoning, translation, summarization together in the right way, I think what's most exciting about generative AI is these emergent capabilities where you don't have to program everything in. If you structure the prompting in the right way, if you give it the right context and not too much so it doesn't get confused, you can get really quite nuanced dialogues with reasoning over structured and unstructured data and ultimately delivering emergent capabilities, which are really quite exciting. But just remember, generative AI is a truly disruptive technology. It's faster and cheaper to build generative AI solutions. But in some ways they're worse than what came before in terms of classic conversational AI and legacy tech because it's not scripted. So you don't know exactly what the system might say. And sometimes it slips up, but probably no more than your agents do. These are the three phases that I've seen in contact center AI technology. I think the really important thing is not to be an AI snob. The reality is that legacy tech, like notifications, just sending a simple SMS when someone's completed a payment, is a really effective way to stop customers calling back and speaking to agents just to check that payment went through. You can use classic conversational AI techniques for high-risk use cases where you need to script things and be really sure about how the system will interact. But make no mistake, we believe that the general direction is going to be towards more use of generative AI, less scripted interactions, more nuanced dialogue and emergent capabilities. Just don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Continue to leverage legacy and classic conversational AI technologies as you explore the capabilities of generative AI.